Recording in progress.
Okay, let's do the four precious, the four limitless contemplations. Let me check this is off. Oh gosh, sorry, I'm just going to send to people. There are a lot of people for some reason that didn't get my link. Don't know why. It's very strange. Okay. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen damje dewatang dewe jutang den pa juchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindra wa juchik, nering chak tang ni tang trawe tang nom chempola ne pa juchik. So good evening, everybody. It's lovely to see all of you. Mary, if you need to ask anything, please do. I'm very happy if people butt in when I'm talking. It's really fun and lovely. Especially if you're not used to me and my craziness, you can butt in anytime, okay? So tonight, we're going to start a completely new subject. And I really want to do this subject in depth because I think that a lot of us know a lot about the subject, certainly about karma, but not so much about clearing and cleansing and purifying. And so I've called it Clearing Our Messy Karma, the Path to Vajrasattva. And the path is not only the external path, but the internal path. That's what I'm interested in. But what I'm really am interested in is that you ask, hello Pam, I didn't see you, that you ask all your questions that you need to ask. Don't stop, because for me, this cleansing, I mean, everything in my teachings has got to be applicable to you. That's my important thing, that if you are able to cleanse your imprints and your things, then I'm totally delighted about it. I really am. But it's very important, and you can stop me at any point that you want to. It's really important. So when we look at the subject matter of karma, we've got to look at it on two levels. And so I'm going to keep going from one level to the other of the messy karma, because we're looking at it both from the ultimate and the relative level. And that's very, very, very important, because ultimately karma doesn't exist and we don't have to cleanse anything really. But relatively, in the world we are in, we are cleaning it and we are clearing it, and it's really important. But once you are able to really understand your true nature, the karma dissolves completely and totally in 1 minute. So I thought what would be good is to start off with a quote by Churchill, a Churchillism, which he calls it, and I think this is very important. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. So that's kind of whether you're going to make it ultimately or relatively, because the difficulties that we've got to really be quite grateful for, because it's important, because that's the way we can cleanse our karma, and that's the way we can go nearer to that Buddha nature. So I'm going to also start with a little story, which I think is really beautiful with a deep meaning. And it goes like this. a great Chinese landscape artist spent many months on a large mural. Having completed the final strokes, he stepped back to survey his finished work. He sighed deeply and told his apprentice that this was his greatest work and that he could never hope to do a better painting. He handed his brush to his apprentice, walked up to the edge of the mural. He then calmly stepped onto a rock painted in the foreground of the mural, got into a boat that was moored beside it. He raised the sail and steered the boat across the lake, where he rounded the headland and disappeared forever beyond the horizons. Okay, now that story is a very good story, because the real meaning of that story is when we finally become enlightened, when we finally decide in our heads, which I decided a little while ago, it just didn't happen, that we are finally have had enough of being absolutely bound to samsara, not of helping, but of being bound to samsara. We are ready to disappear beyond the limited horizons that this life in samsara has become. It's really important. But once we do disappear beyond the horizon, we always have to at least let parts of our primordial consciousness return, because there's so much suffering and so much confusion of millions of sentient beings who are wandering in the 6 realms of samsara. And a realm is a mental plane where sentient beings gathered together because of like-mindedness and all suffer. And they all suffer and they all have similar karmic tendencies. Now, if you look at these realms and you even ask yourself the question, because this teaching that I'm giving, coming to Vajrasattva in the end, which is actually internal, not external, but still, by the time you come to Vajrasattva, you have to know yourself inside and outside. It's most important that you know what you are all about. And I see that so many people can't know. Now, for example, all people who are going through similar difficulties or similar pains, like you find if there are women going through breast cancer, they'll all get together with each other. And because they're like-mindedness, they're going through the same difficulties, and they'll help each other largely in that particular realm that they are in. But when the realm is negative, it really becomes something quite impossible. Now, when I look at South Africa, and I think to myself, why is it that I ask myself this question deeply? Why is it that there are so many greedy, corrupt people? What is it? When is it enough for them to have enough money that they don't have to steal the money from the country anymore? But what I understand is that already their parents and grandparents were in a state of deprivation. And even though they've been born into a state where they are free, they still have the mentality of these parents and grandparents who felt they never had enough. So it's a hungry realm, it's a hungry ghost realm where no matter what you've got, you can't part with it and you can't get enough. And I think when we do our prayers for the realms, it's really important to ask for people to wake up and understand, hey, I'm caught in a realm. If you're caught in a hell realm, it's really important. Now, many, many years ago, it was really right at the beginning of my spiritual journey, I used to go into these hell realms and teach. Don't ask me how. I had nothing to do with it. I just used to go to sleep and go and teach in these realms. And I remember many times having rotten things thrown at me while I was in the dream state teaching in these realms. But remember, all that a person needs to do in a hell realm, and that means when they are encapsulated in their anger, in angry imprints, even fearful ones which go beneath the anger, but grudges and bitterness and pain and all of those kind of things. when they are encapsulated, or what I realized was that all they needed to do was say, hey, help me. There must be more than this. I can't go through this repetitive suffering. The minute they put their hand up, they're out of the realm, because it means you've changed the mentality, you've changed what the mind is creating. Now, this is so important for all of you, especially where you have repetitive imprints, so that you find in your life that you come up with the same stuff, people letting you down, or people authoritarian not caring for you, or angry people with you all the time, or situations of deprivation, and again and again and again. Now you have to be able to read this. You have to be able to understand this, because one moment of understanding and you're out, and you are in that Buddha nature. And in the Buddha nature, nothing but nothing is imprinted there at all, because the Buddha nature is not affected by any of the temporary transient things that are going on. So it is a clearing of your mind with awareness, that you have awareness. Now, in the beautiful book, The Circle of the Sun, I just want to give you two of his quotes. He says, our consciousness is dependent on the workings of the body. He says, because of our ordinary consciousness, which is called SEM, S-E-M-S in Tibetan, we suffer varieties of afflictions, physical and mental. And he says, this is the activity aspect of consciousness, and its nature is ignorance. Ignorance, ignoring the truth of the matter, ignorance, okay? And because he says ordinary consciousness, that's your everyday consciousness that you use in your intellect, in your work and everything, ordinary consciousness is not aware of itself. You know, I really want you to understand that. Because it is not aware of itself, therefore it's susceptible to error and distortion. So what's he saying? He's saying you need to be aware of yourself. You need to be so aware that you can see what is repetitive in your life, that you can see what is the mirror-like wisdom, as I was telling you of the 5 wisdom. What is the discriminative wisdom which can tell the difference between the two things? And he then goes on to say, Trale Gamkon, there are 2 distinct aspects of wisdom. One, the wisdom which apprehends the ultimate reality, and that's what I started with, the ultimate reality. And 2, the wisdom which apprehends the nature of all things. So knowing the ultimate and knowing the nature of all things. What's the nature of all things? There's nothing permanent. There's nothing tangible. There's no you. There's no ego. None of these really exist, but they exist on a relative level. And you have to be aware of them. And he says, Sem is the origin of all one's turmoil, frustration, suffering, misery. The potential for liberation is possible because we have Rigpa, because we have this awareness. But if you're not using your awareness, if you are letting things just go, you are going to tell yourself stories about the things in your life. Why is it that I can't get a job? Why is it that I've got a lousy relationship? Why is it that I seem to be going into the walls here and I seem to be never having what I want? You need to read it with your awareness. You need to see that everybody is in the right place at the right time, and that this is a golden opportunity open portal to unity with your true nature. If you can read it and if you can be aware of it, it's really, really important to be able to do that. So I'm going to start with a quote from Vajrasattva's Aspirations, okay? I'm going to only go to the Vajrasattva practice much later, when you really understand what I'm talking about, purification and clearing. Then we'll come to the practice. But in the meantime, we'll look. He's mentioned in many, many different contexts. You get Vajrasattva, okay? Sometimes as a bodhisattva that's serving other beings, sometimes as a Buddha. He comes in all different, sometimes in the center of the mandala. Sometimes he's interchangeable with the Buddha, the Vajra family that we were talking about last week. He's interchangeable. So Vajrasattva, who in his pure white, is in a million places, and of course, right in the center of your heart. So the Dzogchen Tantras describe Sri Vajrasattva as the single embodiment of compassionate activity and one who can purify all that obscures our true nature. So how did he come to this? He came to this. In the past, it is written that he took the following pledge. Now, what I want to say to all of you, I know you, Tati, you went to a retreat recently on aspirations, okay, which is beautiful. And I know she wrote a beautiful aspirational prayer for herself. And I wish that one of these days you would read your aspirational prayer to everybody and that they would write their own aspirational prayers. Because when you actually put your aspirations down on paper, then that is your goal, your pure thing that you're going to reach. And it's really important. So they say that Vajrasattva had incarnations, but remember, we're talking about these cosmic beings that go here and there and everywhere and are able to emanate everywhere. So you hear them as a person, as a bodhisattva, as a Buddha, as everything. They're able to be everything, just as the Buddha was. But this was his pledge that he took. May the emotional and cognitive obscurations present in the mind stream of any sentient being who utters my name, be naturally cleared away and vanished. So that was his goal and his aspiration. And if you look at his name, Vajrasattva, Vajra is the thunderbolt that goes in. And I was listening to Lama Lena, and I'll tell you about that just now, but I was listening to her on Vajrasattva, and she says, imagine his beautiful, clear, yellow-white nectar pouring through you, going into all the particular channels in your body and clearing everything out and coming out of the bottom and going out into a crack in the earth. You know, and I remember doing that with the Nondra. It was very, very good. But this was his vow, his aspiration. And through this auspicious occurrence, such purification does happen. And Vajrasattva purification is not the only purification. And if you want, I will send others to Fiona, and she can put them up for you. But there are lots of ways of cleansing yourself. But the most important thing when you do is that, number one, you know what you're cleansing. And number two, you have the aspiration and the motivation. I really want to cleanse myself. And why do I want to cleanse myself? For whatever reason you want to, because I want to attain enlightenment, because I want to help, because I want to serve. I do a lot of purification practices every single day of my life. And we'll talk about that later. But I first want to talk about what purity is. Does anyone want to say anything at this point? because this is such important stuff, because I want all of you to connect with that Buddha nature. Does anyone want to ask or say or comment? Are you all okay? Eugene, please. Did you want to say something? Oh, okay, I thought you did.
No,
okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, great. So we just need two things to be present. Number one, our devotion to what he stands for within and without, where we are aspiring to purify ourselves, and a connection with the whole of the mandala of the deities of the Vajrasattva mandala, so it can pour through you whenever you do a practice. We should have an empowerment. Lots of you have got that empowerment, or a permission blessing to do the practice, and that makes the connection to Vajrasattva. But I read all the time in all the books that we can do a less complex practice, or even just the mantra without empowerment, and get it when we can. And also Lama Lena gives it on YouTube. So those of you that have never had the empowerment, you can actually look. Some of the lamas are a little bit dubious about giving an empowerment on YouTube or on Zoom. They think it isn't the right thing to do. But you know what? With today's communication and everything, why shouldn't we if we want that empowerment? But in any case, if you've just got in your heart that you want to clear, that's okay. And you can say, and I hope that I will meet a lama or whatever soon that I possibly can. So let's ask the question, what is purification? Okay, Rob Priest in his book, and that's a lovely book for all of you to read. I'll get it here. It's called Preparing for Tantra by Rob Priest. He's really very, very good, because not only is he a Buddhist teacher, but he's also a psychologist. He went and studied psychology afterwards so that he could help people both at a psychological level and a level. But that's a very, very good book to read for all of you. So he says, although we may be given insight into the presence of an innate Buddha nature, if we want to reach at least some form of enlightenment, we must go through the process of removing the obscuring veils of our emotional habits and karmic imprints, before we can reveal the natural quality of our innate awakened nature. And these obscurations are from obvious ones to very, very, very subtle ones. Because I'm always saying to people, do you realize what your motivation is in this? And they get a shock with me. And I say, look at it carefully, because you need to see your subtle motivations. I mean, some people play victims their whole life. Some people are too scared to stand up for themselves, and they need to get to what it is inside them that refuses to stand up for their truth. So we really need to go into this, and you can ask me about that. But he says there are a few rare beings who just awaken spontaneously without much spade work. He says, but these are really few and far between. And he says, it means they've done the spade work in previous lives, but for most of us, it's a long process. Now, he says, he realized, I'm going to stop after this because maybe people want to ask. He realized when doing all the preliminary practices, of which the Vajrasattva practice is a vital part, he realized that in addition to doing these practices, we have psychological wounding in the West. It's funny when he says in the West, because it is in the West, because in the East, they don't carry the wounding. It's so amazing. Whatever they've been through, nowadays, maybe coming into this modern world and getting entangled in all our Western ideas, they may not be able to, but they never had psychological wounding. Why? Because they never held on to anything that they went through. But I must say, in Tibet, they had these wonderful extended families. And so if your mother couldn't feed you, your aunt would pull out her breast and feed you, you know, and everybody fed everybody else's babies. So they had a real secure kind of environment. But anyway, he says, he realized in addition to doing these practices, we have psychological wounding in the West. And he says, without understanding that, sometimes we need some psychotherapy in addition to the preliminary practices. Now, the preliminary practices, including Vajrasattva, will bring out this wounding. But what he realized was that he needed to train as a psychotherapist and use both for a lot of people. I've got to say that in my own work, it's really, really important because very, very often I see that people have got very deep wounding, and that wounding is stopping them from making progress on their spiritual path. So it's really important. And maybe I, as a therapist, often expect my clients who are coming to groups and on a deep spiritual path, often I want them to overcome their psychological and emotional wounding quickly if they're on a spiritual path. And they can't. You can't push it, okay? You've got to go slowly with compassion. And that's why sometimes I walk a slow path with people and I'm there. But I tell them, your awakened nature doesn't even do this. So imagine you're able to awaken into your own place and it doesn't carry this in any way. It's amazing. But people can't. When people are wounded, they're wounded and they hold it. And even though they're learning spiritually, they can't stop with the wounding. And the thing is that I really think that it's very important that Chokni Rinpoche says, the bottom line is that strong emotions obscure, they cover over the self-existing wakefulness. That's what we need, self-existing wakefulness, to know what it is that trips us up, to understand it, to see it, to change it. It's vital because some of these, and prevent progress, those wounds prevent progress in realization. And lots of these are addressed when you do the preliminary practices, but we might need more than that. For example, when I was doing prostration, so, me, the kind of path I was always on, when I was told by the lamas, you need to do all your preliminary practices, then I will go and do them. I'm that kind of a person. But I remember we were in the group that we had, then when we went on retreat, and I cannot begin to tell you how many people in that group never finished all their preliminary practices. They never finished, okay? Why? Because we've got that mentality in the West, like we just haven't got that staying power. When I'm told, listen, Melanie, if you don't do all these purification practices, you won't be able to get the higher things. And it's very interesting because when you go to some of these very high lamas, one of the first questions they ask you, have you finished your Nondro? And if you haven't, they tell you to first go and finish it or see that you finish it along. But I've come to the conclusion that a lot, not most, that a lot of Westerners are not going to finish that practice, which purifies a lot of stuff in you. And so I'm going to ask you in this series to do just a little practice of everything that you can manage, and just do it in an ongoing way, because I still do it on a daily basis, a little bit every day, even after finishing. So you're going through it a second time, you know. And I think the first time I went through it, I was a bit pathetic because I was so determined to go through it that sometimes I realized my mind wasn't there. But let me tell you something. When I started the prostrations, okay, and my husband always said, prostrations, who are you bowing to? You know, what you bowing to? I said, actually, you're remembering your Buddha nature. But what happened to me when I started the prostrations, I got such a shock, because when I started on retreat, stuff was coming out of my pores, of my body. I remember that there was dirt coming out, you know, not dirt, it's not actual physical dirt, but I remember going, what's this coming out of my body, when I was doing them intensively. And I think that none of us really realize how far back our karmic imprints go, from thousands of incarnations. We have so many karmic imprints that all the things we go through are happening because we haven't cleared those karmic imprints. And one day we've got to sit and clear so that we can really be free, especially a lot of you that have been going on this path for a long time. And it's really very important that we look at the term purification, but maybe somebody wants to say something. I don't want to just go on and on and on, because if you've got a wound, if you've got something about the way you feel, how can you approach it? Now, the Dalai Lama was interviewed, and it's very interesting. Howard Cutler was the interviewer, and he asked the Dalai Lama, is there anything you regret doing in your life? The Dalai Lama told him the story of this old monk who was coming to him, and the old monk came to him and said he wanted a particular practice. And the Dalai Lama said to him, sorry, my friend, you can't do this practice because it's very strenuous. You need to be in a young body to do it. It's too late for you to try and do this practice. And the monk killed himself. He committed suicide to be reborn in a young body. That's how deeply he wanted to do that practice. So Howard Cutler said to the Dalai Lama, do you have regret advising him not to do the practice? So the Dalai Lama said, oh, yes, I do have regret, because I'm so sorry he did this. He said, well, what do you do with the regret? So the Dalai Lama said, well, I didn't get rid of it. It's still here, but it isn't associated with the feeling of heaviness or the quality of pulling him back. Whereas what we do when we've got a guilt or a negative quality, we fixate on it. And grasping and fixation are the most inner obstacles, the secret obstacles. So what he was saying is, yeah, I've got the regret, or I've got this anger, but, you know, I'm allowing the anger to come up and let it dissolve. He's able to look at it, and he's not needing to attach to it. Any comments, any questions? I don't want to go on. Please, Mary, do.
I have a quick query, if that's all right, Melanie.
Of course it is.
You said that we really need, in the West, we really need psychotherapy so that we know what these karmic imprints and so on are when we're doing the practice. Well, after a break, I'm one of those Westerners who didn't complete their Nundro, and Vajrasattva is where I stopped, for reasons I won't go into. But I've restarted since the retreat that Tati and I went on. I've restarted, and it's really good. And things are coming up that are about myself that I recognize. So you said that we shouldn't do it till we've had psychotherapy, but it's
No,
almost
no,
like
no.
psychotherapy for me.
Sorry, you actually missed my point, because Rob Priest didn't say that at all. He said that some people need a little bit of psychotherapy. I don't say people need psychotherapy. Some people who've got very deep wounding might need to do it in addition to the Nondra practice. Okay, not that you have to have it for sure. And, you know, sometimes when I sit with clients, sometimes I just want to talk. We just want to talk spiritually, you know. And the thing is that's absolutely beautiful. It's just that sometimes when you've got very, very deep wounding, okay, it is important to have somebody who can understand it. But I think that the kind of therapy that people do, where they completely and totally keep on, you know, yes, I understand what you feel. Yes, I understand what you feel. I think it's not so helpful to people, because I think they stick, especially. And my best story was of a young woman that I once counseled who had this terrible, terrible rape. And this guy broke into her room and broke right into her room and came and raped her, okay? And she was a young girl and really couldn't get over the horrors of this, okay? But what this man did, when she told me the story, I picked it up, you know, in it. What this man did was, after he raped her, he then put the blankets over her. Can you believe it? And then said to her, see that you lock this window. And he went out of the window while she was lying there. Now, you know what? I mean, such an amazing story, because I said to her, oh my God, we could see the humane element, the beautiful nature of this person who was completely wounded, and who, whatever reason, you know, whatever his reason was for breaking in and raping somebody, such a horrible thing to do, but he had that humane element in the end by covering her and telling her. And so what I did was I emphasized that. And I said, that is how you are going to clear this imprint, because you could see that he actually had an amazing, he really had an amazing, you know, humane manner with this horrible, violent act. It's, you know, we look for that. And that helped her so much, because she said, he kept thinking, but he's a human and he was kind to me and everything. And that made her, that didn't make her feel so dirty, so awful, so wounded. You know, so I said, maybe you taught him something amazing, because maybe seeing you lying there as this innocent girl, perhaps something will change. And maybe you should make some prayers for him to change, you know, and that's how I looked at it. So that he was the victor. So I think sometimes you do need a little bit of help to clear the garbage, especially people that are stuck in their psychology, but certainly not everybody. And certainly the Nondra is a real way of purifying, but also accumulating, which we're going to talk a bit about as well. So that's very, very good point that you're bringing up. So anyone else want to say anything or ask anything? You're all very quiet tonight. Okay. Okay, let's carry on. So what the term for a Buddha in Tibetan is Sangye, S-A-N-G-Y-E. Okay. And Sangye consists of two syllables. Sangwa, which means cleansed or purified of all obscurations. Cleansed or purified of all obscuration. And Jepa, G-Y-E-P-A, meaning having generated all qualities. Now, if you look at that name, it's fascinating, because Sangye Therefore, within the very heart of the realization of a Buddha are the two attributes of purification and accumulation. Now, in this series, we're not going to do much of accumulation. I'm going to give you a little bit. But those two are the wings of the bird. I remember reading about them in somebody's studies. They're the two wings of the bird. You need to accumulate merit and wisdom, and I'll explain to you what happens when you don't accumulate. What happens to people? We just look at people and we think they're weak, they're not motivated. We don't understand that it is because they have not accumulated the merit and wisdom, so they can't function very well in their lives. It's really important. So in the different traditions, from Theravada to Mahayana to Vajrayana, these two terms, purification and accumulation, are viewed in subtly different ways. And to understand this, we must know that our true nature, our primordial consciousness, which we've been discussing in the last weeks with the 5 Buddha families, is clear and free from any defilement. No karma, no ignorance, ignoring the truth, no emotional afflictions. So all we have to do is get to this consciousness. But we are so covered by the garbage of all our obscurations, we have totally forgotten who we really are, like the story of the pearl. And we've also forgotten, so we have to have someone who's already found their true nature or knows their true nature and who remembers and has attained this, has to point it out to us. That's why when we find it, we've got to come back and help other people to find it, but they can point it out and the ways to get there. And the practice of Vajrasattva, whether the formal practice or even just the mantra and a short visualization, is one of the most powerful practices to help us clear all the garbage. So remember, the practices like Vajrasattva go together with purifying through very difficult earthly circumstances. So for example, and this is a very interesting thing, you all know the story of Milarepa. If you don't, then read up about it. But when Milarepa, Milarepa did black magic and he killed all the people in his uncle's family because they'd taken his father's money and all of this kind of thing. So he had a lot of purification and he did it in one lifetime. But when Marpa took him, he said to him, he gave him these ridiculous tasks. He said to him, I want you to build me a tower in the one corner of his house. And then it took him months to build this tower, taking the things. And then when he was finished, the day he was finished, Marpa said, no, I don't want it there. Build it over there. Okay, so he had to he said, I can't. He had to take the whole thing down over his back, bleeding and everything, and build it over there. And then Marpa said, no, it's still not right. I think we better build it in the middle. Anyway, by the time Marpa finished him with all this building, he was ready to commit suicide. He just couldn't do it. And he wanted these teachings desperately. And he went to Marpa's wife and he said, I want to commit suicide. I can't do this anymore. And then she went to Marpa and Marpa said, okay, come, I'll give you the teaching. And then with absolute determination, he went and did it. So many, many times we can purify through the difficult physical circumstances of our lives. So sometimes in building, sometimes in clearing, sometimes in everything. If I look at my own life, and I haven't had a life of physical hardship, so to speak, but when I went to India and came to India, was there for 4 days and then was kicked out because they didn't have the visas for us. When I was there, I remember thinking I was absolutely desperate when I went into I had to find another place to live. And this girl said to me, try the Karmapa's monastery. And I went in, and I didn't like this monastery at all, but the Karmapa was there, and I thought, well, I better take this because I didn't have a permit to go back to where I really needed to be. But when I look back, so many things had happened to me. For example, the day that I came to that monastery, and I didn't like the whole setup, and there was no greenery, there was nowhere you could really walk or anything. And I thought, oh my God, I've come for this long retreat, and here I am at this thing. And I went down to have lunch, and there was a girl there in the restaurant that we became quite friendly. And she spoke to me disgustingly. Okay, she said to me, what is wrong with you? She said, you are in the best monastery in the world with the highest master, and you are feeling bewildered. What is wrong with you? I was so shocked. I was already in a turmoil and a thing, and I just looked at her. The tears were running down my face, you know, and I just quietly sneaked off to my room, had a good cry, and then I thought, she's right. She's absolutely right. And I pulled myself out of it and made the most of the circumstances in there. Now, interestingly enough, that particular girl, later in the months that I was in India, needed me. And she needed help from me. Later, when I was back at Sheridling, she needed help from me. And I remember thinking to myself, this is unbelievable that she's the one who stabbed me with a knife. And that stabbing with a knife was the best thing she ever did for me, because it pulled me out of all my crap. And there I was getting on with it after that. And now she was for everything. She needed to hold my hand for everything. She collapsed, okay? But it's a funny story, because basically that whole period of time going to see the chief of police, trying to get it, that was purifying my karma, together with the fact that when I was at the Karmapa's monastery, my room was here. It was the noisiest place imaginable. And his room, I could see his room from there. And I asked him to purify me while I was there. And so most of those weeks that I spent at that monastery, I was crying, because most of the time as I was doing my practice, stuff was coming up, even from previous lives, from everything. And so only when I had completed this could I go to Taisito Rinpoche, and could he actually say to me, okay, now what do you want? Because I had been cleansed by it. So your circumstances, the masters in Tibet, when they got tortured in the prisons by the Chinese, they used to think to themselves, this is amazing purification. So think about your lives, and think about how, like Kathy, when you were ill and everything, you were going through mega purification, you know, and accumulation for that matter. But I mean, that changed your whole life, you know, and that's what people are like. And so it's really important that you all understand that, and that you know that you have to, before you can get the real practice, you may have to go through a lot of stuff and a lot of things. And I think that, you know, in the same book, The Circle of the Sun, he says, as the practitioner progresses, first, the gross defilements begin to subside. Then the subtle defilements, and finally, the most subtle defilements. He says, wisdom is nothing other than realizing that fact. As the defilements decrease, the wisdom increases. And that is how it is, he says. If a person who was born blind contacts a doctor skilled in restoring sight, then that person will be able to see. Gradually, as the blind person becomes used to having sight, they will be able to observe and perceive the details of the visual presentation. He says the analogy is used because the blind person needs to have eye organs to begin with. Okay, without these, that sight could not be restored. And the physician has only assisted, nothing extraneous. The potentiality for sight was already there. Similarly, he says, all living beings are already endowed with Buddha nature, intrinsic awareness, which is pure right from the beginning. And that primordial purity is covered by defilements. So a spiritual doctor must assist to help make use of the eye of wisdom. But it was all there to begin with. Do you all understand that? Because it's really important. It's really important. Jade, my darling, do you want to say anything? Do you? No. Anybody, just don't be.
No, we were talking before about regret, and I think in our society, as something that goes with that is guilt. So the guilt that kind of holds you back in regarding to move on and not be attached to whatever you've done.
You see, when you look at that, I know in certain people in the Christian religion and so on, the finger's always wagging in front of you and a lot of things, if you do this or you don't do this, this is what's going to happen to you and all these kind of things. Now, in Buddhism, it's never, ever like that. It's called ignorance, ignoring the truth, not guilt. Therefore, whoever has done deeds or hurts or pain or suffering of whatever nature has the opportunity to clear it. Often when I'm dealing with a person who, say, lost their life partner, okay, and then they're sitting with me and we're talking about the bereavement, and they say, Melanie, if only I would have done more of this, or I would have done less of this. I really regret that. And I say to them, if you use awareness of that, you will find that the universe will give you another opportunity. It may not be with a partner, but somebody will come along that you can use that new skill with. So I think that in Buddhism, it's not about guilt. It's about saying, what I committed was done with ignorance. Sometimes it was done deliberately, and if it was done with deliberately, then you ask, I really want to purify this. And Bob's your uncle, within days, people will come to you to give you another chance. It's the most amazing thing, that as soon as you create that thought of, I need this or I need that, it'll be there. But you know how many times it's there and people don't see it because they're not aware? It's amazing, that someone comes along to give you another opportunity and you can't see it.
Yeah.
Go on.
But I think guilt can also be a karmic trap.
So do I. Tell me why you say that.
Because I think guilt fuels your narrative. So if your narrative is that I'm this or I'm that, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drunk, or I'm somebody with a temper and that kind of stuff, in a sense, you're kind of justifying your behavior. So you'd rather feel guilty about it than do something about it to some extent. But it's difficult to do, and it's not to say that I'm saying it a bit harshly, without compassion. I think it's hard to face your things, but I think that's why I like Buddhism, because it's not this God save me and I need forgiveness, but you're not really, what are you doing to change it? You're not purifying since we're talking about purification rituals. You're not really doing anything to purify it. So I think Buddhism is a way for you to say, my pure potential is this. I'm in a physical incarnation with these kind of habits, but I can overcome these habits by doing these kind of practices and behaviors, and then you lift yourself out of it. But I think like guilt can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like I did this, oh well, I'm doing it again because I guess that's who I am. But like, it's almost like you're creating a vibrational field around you, and then you're manifesting the environments and the situations and the people to make that manifest again and again and again and again.
100%. And you see, the most important thing of what you're saying is the stories we tell ourselves. It's not even the action. It's not even the thought. It's not even the emotion. It's the stories we tell ourselves. So some people really feel like victims, and they keep telling themselves the story that they're victims. Some people really feel themselves as this or that, and their whole story, their whole narration is around that. That's what you're saying. And once you have a story, then that's a fait accompli. You know, you are that story. And so what can you really do? And I see it all the time.
Because identity fuels behavior, and behavior fuels habits, and habits fuels like your reality.
Exactly. So tonight, I want you all, we're going to do a meditation in 2 minutes, but I want you all to look at your stuff and to know that it's temporary, transient, impermanent, and that if you decide at any given point, even for 1 minute, if you decide this that I did is not on, and I know I did it, and I did it stupidly, and I did it for this reason and that reason, and I really need to cleanse it. And please give me the chance, universe, to cleanse it. I promise you, within a couple of days, you'll have that chance, even if you can't do it with a particular person that you had it with. It's amazing. And, you know, I'm always amazed at what people are able to heal afterwards, you know. But what I want to say is that the other side of the coin, accumulation, I just want to do a tiny bit and then let's do meditation. What do we have to accumulate? And I'll do another talk on accumulation, a separate one, because it's a very long subject. We need to accumulate merit and wisdom, without which, no matter how much we purify, we still won't get to our pure nature. I just want to give you this, and then we'll meditate. So we're not going to talk about this in depth. We're just going to look and know that the accumulation of merit and wisdom goes hand in hand with purification. When we wake up one day and we decide, you know what? I want to go on this path of spiritual realization, which a lot of you have done. Then we need to have gathered the causes and conditions to get there through an accumulation of merit. Even to think of the path, we need to have already accumulated some merit before. Otherwise, we wouldn't even think about it. So in Tibetan, the word is sonam, merit. It's a particular kind of virtuous karma that generates the fortunate ripening conditions, both inner and outer, that enable us to develop our spiritual life and how quickly we develop it. Remember, we also need merit for our physical, financial, psychological, and emotional life too. So hindrances and obstacles often come from not having the merit. So how do you get merit? First of all, through a particular quality of intention. That's where your two aspirations come. By having the aspirations, we really do. Merit is the natural outflow of a life dedicated to the service of others. And when we touch our Buddha nature, It's automatic that we want to help people. But doing particular practices with a dedicated heart accumulates merit. And the preliminary practices of Nondro are all about the two wings of the bird, accumulation and purification. Now, Tsoknyi Rinpoche says he's noticed in the West that a lot of people feel depressed and uninspired for no obvious reason. Sometimes there is a reason, sometimes they just feel it. And they don't get joy out of life. He says this happens, he says, even though their physical surroundings are pretty comfortable. He says some psychologists call it low self-esteem, but it has many variations that permeate their lives, like something's missing from my life. I don't know what it is, but something is missing from my life. And that is exactly what is meant by a lack of merit, a shortage in the accumulation of merit, which is felt as a depression. Okay, so compare this to someone who's going through a really hard, difficult time and is totally positive. Just compare that. So when we have gathered a fair amount of merit and wisdom, we spontaneously feel at ease. We are not burdened by things, and the opportunities we need happen often so easily and naturally. We have a lightness of being. Meditation practice and understanding the Dharma, especially deep practice, comes easily like you've always known it. That comes from the accumulation of merit. Now, when you haven't got the accumulation of merit, you can be a very negative person. You know, you can watch the accumulation of merit. People that have got money, if you watch them, you know, they clearly, people who've got a lot of money and a lot of things at their disposal, they clearly have been totally generous in previous lives, even if they've become snoop in this life. They've been totally generous, which accumulates the merit of abundance. Now remember, whatever you haven't got the merit to have. So when you purify, you might start developing the merit, but it's really important that you all see the difference between, you know, the purification and the accumulation. That's all I'm going to say about it. You might want to ask me something. But the thing is that both of them are really, really very important, but we're going to just concentrate here on the purification at the moment. Anyone want to ask something or say something? We're going to do a meditation.
I fundamentally believe in that.
Good. I'm really happy. I know you do. And you know what, Eugene, that's why you've been able to get out of so many difficult situations.
Ask me what happened Thursday.
Oh, did you go backwards or forwards? What happened Thursday?
I was sideswiped by a car who then proceeded to hit two cars. He was coming out behind a truck without looking. And like my car's written off. So he hit me on my front driver's side wheel so hard that my rim snapped in half and I was careening off the road without a tire. And so like we all left unscathed. Like nobody had a bone broken, organ damage, cuts or anything. But it
what
like
knock did you need in life?
I think it's just like sometimes, you know, like sometimes things just purify that. So I don't know. I was on my way to Paternoster to go away for 2 days to go and meditate at a seaside shack. So I don't think I had any bad motivation.
Oh, definitely not. But you know, sometimes it's not to do with where you're going. Sometimes we just need a clap over the head or whatever the case is. And maybe in the end, when we look back, you know, that could be a very important moment in your life, you know, but Jesse, to go through something like that and not come out with a broken bone or a broken anything means in some way you did have the merit, you know, not to really injure yourself.
Yeah, like I don't even have trauma. Like, so the windscreen smashed, or my driver's side window smashed. I have some burns from the airbag because I had to hold without a wheel. But that's it. So I think it's maybe because like I've just been doing my own thing and isolating. So the universe is now open up. You need to let people in a little bit. If I have to look deeper, I think that's probably what the universe is saying. Because it looks like I've committed suicide or tried to commit suicide. So now at work, everybody is asking me what the hell happened. And I'm like, I did not cut my wrists. Like,
What a terrible thing, shame. Well, have a look at it. Let's do a meditation, everybody. I'm going to just put this on to gong you, and then I'm going to give you 2 things in this meditation. Okay, so I want you to get into your lovely meditation posture. And I want you to just breathe in a few deep breaths and totally relax your physical body. It's really important to relax your physical body. And as you breathe in, I want you actually to just notice the blue sky of your beautiful being. Wide open, spacious, deep blue, accommodating, beckoning, magnetizing. I want you to actually be in touch with this beautiful nature, so wide open, so blue, that you suddenly have a dawning that there is space for everything in your life. The good, the bad, the indifferent. There is so much space. When it comes within the beautiful space of your universal primordial consciousness, it just dissolves completely and totally. Now, within this beautiful space, I want you to just look back on this life. Having that space around you, I just want you to look back on this life and pick up 1 or 2 of the repetitive things that you can see are in your karmic imprints. No guilt. You're just looking objectively as though you were going through a deep casket and just picking out the things. There might be things you feel ashamed of. There might be things you hurt. There might be stupid things you did. There might be losses. There might be resentments that you're carrying. There might be grudges that you've never given up. Just want you to go through and pick out the repetitive ones. What is it in your life that keeps repeating itself and obscuring your vision? Pick out 1 or 2. Just just examine them very, very deeply. With awareness, nothing else. The tool of awareness. No guilt, just watching them. Even with a little compassion, because whenever we look back, it's really hard to see the truth of what we were doing at a particular time, so we can understand it. Once and for all, see yourself with compassionate eyes. We've all gone through lifetimes where we feel disappointed, sad, misunderstood, not seen for who we are. And feel for yourself how we did it, what we did. The claps over the head that we've had. Just look deeply. You are this beautiful spiritual being. And sometimes in ignorance, stupidity, self-defense, we have gone through mistakes. That's okay. As long as we understand them, that's the beginning of the purification. To understand and to really have awareness is already the beginning of the dissolving of those imprints and ensuring that they're not repeated. Sometimes, when we have that beautiful awareness, we can put the karmic tapestry together. When I look at somebody, I'm always looking at the whole karmic tapestry with the question mark. How come they're going through this? What does it really mean? Is there another way? Why is this person suffering such terrible depression? Why is this person suffering in their relationship? Why is this person not able to get the job and not able to make any money? Why? You put the question mark. Just to see. You don't have to do anything but develop complete awareness and know that the beautiful blue spaciousness of your mind can accommodate everything and transmute everything. That every single mishap and every single obscuration and karmic imprint can really change to wisdom. very, very interesting. And what we can do next time is I want to go through the details of how the karmic imprints, what they look like in terms of, in the Tibetan tradition, you've got 2 levels of purification. And that's really, really important. And also from a Buddhist point of view, we need to know, as Rob Priest says, we need to understand we're not trying to cultivate a pure or perfect personality. We're not doing that. Rather, we are discovering that our innate nature is already pure, clear, and empty, but is obscured by an accumulation of psychological, emotional, and karmic proliferations that need to be cleared so we can experience it directly. He says, when you're trying to live a perfect, pure life in which we are very well controlled and well behaved or piously good, is not purification. It's merely the manipulation of our personality into something that we think we should be. Interesting. Barry, I like your little smiles. It's really nice. But the thing is that, you know, when you start realizing of yourself, you know, sometimes my husband says to me, oh, well, you do this and you do that, and you call yourself a Buddhist and all of that kind of thing. And I go, but you know what? Yeah, sure, I do those things, but I do with a lot of awareness. I really am aware, because from doing many hours of practice, it's really important that you can see and be aware of how you come across and what you're doing. Why are you so quiet, Kati? Are you on the train still?
No, I'm just listening. So yeah, but so Mal, in this mindfulness course I'm doing at the moment, we're doing a lot of work with the undercurrent, and it's been really valuable for me. So you know, and just listening to all of this, because you know, when you're working with the undercurrents, in a very using a lot of awareness, you can really see what comes up, you know, what's going on. Then it doesn't all have to be negative.
Oh, exactly. Do you all know what the undercurrent is? Okay. Define the undercurrent, Kathy.
Okay, so it's our stream of thoughts, beliefs, opinions, attitudes that's constantly going on all day, throughout the day. So what we do when we meditate is that we just watch the undercurrent, and thoughts are going to come up, and, you know, without suppression, you're just letting whatever's going on, whether it's a feeling or a memory or a tune of a song, or it's going to just keep popping up. It comes from nowhere and it goes nowhere. But what happens is that we identify with that undercurrent, and we think it's who we are, but it's just a stream of thoughts going on, and it could be positive, it could be negative, and it could be neutral. And by just letting the undercurrents come up, you know, you're just liberating these thoughts and these feelings. And they literally, like Rob Nairn, when he taught mindfulness, he said that the mind, the body releases breath and the mind releases thoughts. So you're just allowing this undercurrent to come up and let it release without doing too much about it. All that you're doing is you keep returning to your meditation support, but very lightly.
But you see, when you now go further on the path, okay,
yeah,
you don't even need to have an actual physical focus or anything like that.
yes,
I rather want people to just go into the spaciousness. I've been reading and learning a lot about that, into the spaciousness of your mind. And then, I think with that mindfulness training, sometimes it's so busy with techniques that you're busy with doing all of that and you don't actually go into the spaciousness of your mind.
No, we actually are. We
Oh,
actually, it's a very she's a really good teacher, and for me it's been really beneficial because it's repetition, but it's like doing all this, you know, mindfulness stuff again, and it's been really helpful for my practice, you know, and just letting, I mean, this week I'm very tired when I meditate. I'm so tired and dozy. Last week I was noticing paranoia coming up and just noticing it, and it was very beneficial for me.
okay, good. If you're getting a good benefit, that's very good. But that undercurrent goes on
Yeah.
all the time. And sometimes when you're in a silent retreat, the undercurrent is going all the time. Then you're not in a silent retreat because all these things are coming up. Anyway, so next week, everybody, we're going to look at the details of the purification. And then I also want to look at, I'm not going to teach the Nondra in any way, but I'm going to teach some of my experiences with the Nondra so that people can really see, you know, what is each one, because to do the accumulation and the purification is really very important. And I think it's really possible to just do a little bit every day. And I think you can really get places. You don't have to do the thousands and thousands that you need to do. As long as you're doing it and you're doing it with meaning, it is a purification. But we'll come to Vajrasattva, because what I asked Fiona to do was, I've taken a lovely, lovely, very short English practice of Vajrasattva, not the Nondra and the whole detail of it, that people can really use. And then I'm going to try, Fee, if you don't mind, and give you some also other short practices that people can do in English, which makes it really easy. You can do them around the bathroom, wherever you are, so that you are constantly clearing and clearing those obscurations until the diamond comes out of all the garbage. So let's dedicate tonight to all beings who are suffering, and there are so many on this earth plane. It's just unbelievable. So if anybody can benefit from this, it'll be wonderful. So through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience, may all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene jeganachi balap dropaye sipe sole doa drowarsho.